Next Level Agents listeners, what is going on? Ryan Hodge, how you doing, my brother?
I'm so excited to be here, Ben. It's super cold up where I am, snowing like crazy, but
Yeah.
here we are, and I'm loving what you guys are doing. So happy to chat.
Awesome. So where are you exactly? Tell me.
So I am in London, Ontario, Canada. We are right in between Toronto and Detroit, so about 90
Okay.
minutes in between both. Smaller to mid-sized city, about 370,000 people here.
Okay, cool. And have you been there most of your life?
Yeah, born and raised, lived in Toronto for a little bit. I'd been a national sales manager for a jewelry manufacturer right after I finished university. So I took over a territory in Toronto, which is the largest real estate board on the planet, about 55,000 agents there. And I lived there for about a year, but it's a different animal there. So I came back home.
Right on. Well, so I can't help but to notice the beanie. It says the Realty Firm. Tell us what the Realty Firm is.
Yeah, so the Realty Firm is my brokerage that I own. Actually, I started off my career with Remax back in 2008, and
Okay.
back then I had just a unique start. I sold over 100 homes my first year, so that kind of promoted me through the wonderful organization of Remax, and did some fun stuff there with speaking to some of their brokerages and some of their events. And then in 2013, I decided, in my market anyways, London, it could use a different model. So I opened an independent at the time, and yeah, it just kind of took off. We recruited over 100 agents in a 3-year time period. Some ups and downs, learning along the way. But ultimately, right now, we're heading for 100 agents, and we've got an office here in London, and then a smaller office about 30 minutes outside of the city that has 8 to 10 agents, give or take, so far as well. So,
Right on, man. That sounds pretty awesome. So, all right. So you've been in the business for, I guess, 10 years now, right? So 2008.
yeah,
You've owned your own brokerage for the last three. Did I hear that
five,
right?
five.
Five. Okay. So last 5 years, you've owned your own brokerage, a realty firm, because you just saw a need for a different model, which I love. Like that's something I love about you is that you saw a need in the market and you went, you know what, I can go out and do this, right?
Mhm.
Because you're quite frankly, you're just one of those like I'm gonna go get shit done type of guys, which I love.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, that's why we come together, man. Because I like watching what you guys are doing, and it's always good to break it down in terms of how people are doing things differently. And there's so many options that are available to people, but ultimately, when you look at, I think the overall model, I just found that and it's no joke and no discredit to anyone, but the brokerage model is a very complacent model. Just based on demographic, years in the business, a lot of brokers that have done really well back in the 80s and 90s and are kind of taking their foot off the gas. And
oh yeah.
I had a great relationship with my previous broker, but I just thought that our market, like many markets, could use something different for growth in terms of how people can grow their business and quality of life inside of an organization.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. My business partner Fred has been saying quite a bit. There's a lot of talk in our industry about disruption and technology and all that stuff, and there's certainly a lot of stuff going on, right? There's a lot of changes happening, and I think that the bigger disruption that we're seeing right now, and we're going to probably see first, is like in the brokerage model, right? We're starting to see all these new models pop up, and a lot of different things being tried. Some of them are working, some of them not so much. And that I do feel like it's that brokerage piece that is getting more, to use a buzzword, disrupted, which I can't even stand that word anymore.
Yeah.
However, like the reality is I do think it's the brokerage model that's disrupted first, and not to say as us as salespeople won't be disrupted, because we certainly are. I also don't think it's going to be nearly as severe as what's happening in the brokerage world. So I think you hit the nail on the head. But you said something a few minutes ago that I want to go back to, because I'm sure some of our listeners heard it too. Your first year in real estate, you came out of the gates and you sold 100 houses.
Yeah, 117, I believe, is the official number. Sometimes it's 114, sometimes it's 118, but I believe it's 117. Yeah.
All right, so tell me about that. How does a guy first year in real estate sell 100 plus houses in his first year? Like your first year, dude. That's phenomenal. Like, how does that even happen?
Yeah, it was different. When I worked for my dad for 10 years, and
Okay.
he owned a jewelry manufacturer, and we have a unique relationship, and that family business model, man, can be just a
Oh man.
kick in the teeth at times, right? And so, my dad had this huge success inside of real estate, or not real estate, inside of the jewelry manufacturing industry. And when I was going through university, I just started working from him. It was a good place for us to reconnect because we had a distant relationship when I was growing up. And when we got together, I just kind of took off. I took everything that I wanted to do inside of it, and I just kind of went for it inside of his business. But as I was ramping up and kind of had pretty much not exploited, but explored all of the ways that I could grow, he was slowing down. And we just kind of went like this.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I'll never forget it. And I mean, my dad and I have a good relationship to this day. But, the day that I told him I was going to get into real estate, he said, this will be the worst career decision you ever make. Because it was a good, solid company. And I would have taken over it, no doubt about it. It would have been very lucrative down the road. But it just wasn't for me, and I didn't want to wait. So I jumped in and, tripled my income year one. So it was super that way. As far as how, I would say that my skill set is really about implementation. I'm not afraid to get on the phones or do things like that. But I started off with a couple of things, working my own sphere. I had a really good sphere of influence inside of my market. Now, the key was how could I get people to take me seriously? Because all my buddies and that I grew up with, they weren't feeling me as a realtor right away.
They know all your secrets, bro. They were at the same
Oh
party
yeah,
with you, right? So
it was kind of crazy that way. But over time, and with the right, strategies in terms of just, staying in touch and connecting with them, just, building that respect factor versus the like factor, both online and offline. That was really what did it. So my breakdown was 34 ends through free organic Facebook, which
okay.
was primarily messaging, using private messenger in Facebook to prospect. So
Okay.
34 ends through that, 27 through my database, just, the working by referral models, and there's piles of those out there. 22 through online lead gen, 14 through a direct mail marketing campaign that I started, which was slow and steady to start. And then the traditional stuff, open houses, door knocking, prospecting, things like that.
Tell me about that. Tell me about that the organic Facebook. You said mostly direct messaging. Now,
Yeah.
I've heard you talk about this, right? Because we've had you in to do a couple webinars inside the Facebook group, Next Level Agents, on your Facebook A to Z. And so I've seen some of the details, but tell some of the listeners maybe that haven't heard your story about that. Like, how do you use Messenger to prospect?
Sure. So I think that, when we look at, and I've polled, over 5,000 agents, and I know that you guys watch this as well. What are the two things that get in the way of the happiness and freedom that we desire inside and outside of real estate? Number one answer is always time, right? Where we can move into different choices that we make inside of that time. That's a whole different topic. Number two is always fear, right? So people are very, very fearful of what others will think of them if they put themselves out as a realtor or a real estate agent or a broker, whatever. And so I found that simply sending messages and understanding that real estate is a contact sport.
Yes.
We've got to be proactive and make contact, or else we're just waiting for business to fall in our laps. And I didn't want that to happen. So I just started sending simple messages. Hi, it's Ryan. Got into a new business with a new company. I'd like to send you some information. Please send me your email address, phone number, and your mailing address. And these were anybody that might buy, sell, or refer me a real estate transaction. And I think I had at the time about a list of 1,000 people on my Facebook. And I didn't like Facebook at the time. I was like, this is just this crazy little environment because I was so new to it. And so out of that 1,000, I think about 300 people only responded. And out of that 300, only about 100 people, so about 10% of the overall 1,000, actually sent me the information that I wanted. But that 100 people became an absolute gold mine, because then I could consistently send messages. I could send newsletters, emails, make the odd phone call, send them to a client appreciation event. And it just took off that way. I think in 10 years, it's over 500 deals just through that organic Facebook messaging. It's crazy. Yeah.
Dude, that's so powerful. Like, I hope someone's listening to this and they heard those numbers, because I think what happens is most agents, and my guess is you probably have a similar experience. Most agents go, well, if I'm going to send a message to 1,000 people and only like 300 people respond, I only get 100 people's contact information. Like, that sounds bad, only 10%. Now, what I know is that if you have 100 people that will absolutely be happy to receive your information via mail, via text, via phone, via email, like, that is a solid start at amazing database. And so when I heard those numbers, I'm like, I hadn't heard that before, or maybe I just hadn't caught on to it after, even though I've been on a couple of your webinars. Like, that's huge. Those are huge numbers. And that is super powerful to have 100 people do that for you.
Well, I mean, you look at the rule of 7, right? I mean, people move every 5 to 7 years on average. So if you have a list, and that's what we want to get people to do, is like build that list to 100 as quickly as you can. Because even if you've got a list and you go conservatively on 7, it's 14.3 potential transactions each and every year. That if you just do, a minimal commitment to contacting people, reminding them that you're in the business, open for business, there is a ton there.
Yeah.
And if you do it really well, it's going to be so much more than 14.
And the thing is like, it's funny. I'm guessing you sent the same message to all 1,000 people, right?
Everyone.
Probably copy and paste.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Because why wouldn't you? They don't know. And so it takes so little, it can sound daunting, but it takes so little time to actually do something that is so effective that can have such a high return for you. So that's huge. How did you have the foresight? Like, did somebody give you that strategy? Did you just think, I'm going to do it? Like, how did you think to do that on Facebook?
So when I first got into the biz, I had been in a business prior that I didn't mind getting on the phone or going door to door. Like, there was a lot of business to business sales. So what I recognized was that I've got to reach out to people. I've got to let them know that I'm in. And at the time, I think I read, Millionaire Real Estate Agent, way back when. And
solid, yeah.
How am I going to, make 33 contacts or whatever it was. So I thought, 12 messages, like one per month, is pretty simple. And I just categorized it. So day 1, 26 letters in the alphabet. Day 1, I'd go through the A's. Day 2, the B's. Day 3, the C's, and so on. Because obviously, anytime that you pick up the phone to door knock or cold call or, whatever it is, I don't care if you're the greatest producer on the planet, there's going to be that element of awkwardness and fear that we all face. It's just human nature. It's the way that our unconscious brains work. For me, the skill set is, I can move past it a little bit quicker, where a lot of people have a real hard time, even handing it a business card to somebody that don't know, and that's okay. But when you look at Facebook, well, it's a lot easier to send a message in cyber world. It's kind of like cheating with prospecting, right? Because you're able to send this, and as long as you can face a little bit of what might happen if somebody rejects your message or doesn't respond, so be it. But I mean, I just looked at it like, once I got that first transaction and, I thought, I didn't spend a dime to do this on social. This wasn't, a flyer or an online lead or anything. I just want to keep this up because that is just gold. That's the lowest cost form of marketing that I've ever done.
It's so funny, man. Even to this day, like, social is a gold mine when played well. And
Totally.
Most people just go, well, I want to do Facebook ads, and they don't know anything about Facebook ads. But realistically, the real gold in social is actually, number one, either free, or number two, very inexpensive when done right and applied the right strategy. And I know all about strategies that work, even that are paid as well. And so, man, let me go back a minute. You talked about, like, people, especially newer agents, like they're afraid sometimes even just to hand out their card.
Yeah.
And you said you move past that fairly quickly. Like, that's a skill set of yours. How does the average agent do that? Like, I'm a new agent. Pretend this. I'm a new agent. I'm listening to this podcast, and I'm listening to this guy, Ryan. I'm listening to you talk about how you have a skill set, or you can move past that fear. Is there anything I can do? Is there anything tactical that you can give me to help me move past that fear? Obviously, without knowing me and going into a deep coaching relationship type of deal.
Hmm. That is what it is. You know, it is a deep dive. Like if somebody really wants to go down the road of, you know, I need to overcome what this fear is, because ultimately the fear, you know, is really, really heavily based in validation, right? Why we're seeking validation from others, or we're worried what other people think. And that's, you know, on all levels inside of real estate and life. And
Right.
so I think that when people can really look at where was that experience created originally, that they can, you know, responsibly make decisions to uncover it, you know, like cut the negative cords that, you know, that might be associated with it, and then move into that path of, they know that it exists, but they can move past it just a little bit quicker. And it's in that consistency of doing something like that, that then they go, hey, that worked. I can have a conversation on Facebook because, you know, nobody, you know, said like, no, I don't want to work with you right now, like right in front of your face where you kind of feel like shit, right?
Right.
But it allows people to then go, hey, if I can do it here, maybe, you know, my dialogue in an open house and building up that confidence to do it everywhere is where I think that, you know, the high producers just have it. They all have a really good foundation for the most part of, you know, what makes them, what created the experience in the first place, and they can just move past it a little bit quicker. Never perfect, but a little bit quicker for sure.
All right. So let me ask it to you this way, Ryan. Like I think that's a great response, but I need more, right? So
Mhm.
I'm that new agent. I need more. And obviously you don't know me. You and I can't go on a deep dive, right? We
Yeah.
have a few minutes here. And so, and maybe you can't take me on as a coaching client, whatever, but,
Sure.
but I want to know more. And I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, I just had like, is there a resource? Is there a tool? Is there a book I should go read? Is there a class I should take that might help me start to uncover that first like step of a deep dive where maybe, because like maybe I'm not ready for a coach yet, right? Or I'm
Mhm.
not ready for a psychologist, or I literally just need a tool for
Yeah.
that, like step one, maybe even step two. Is there any, do you have any recommendations for somebody who's thinking that right now?
I think that, you know, in terms of, you know, prospecting and, you know, that fear associated with it, there's a lot inside of, you know, books like Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blount. He does
Yeah.
a good job inside of that. Pretty much anything to do with taking action, you know, you'll find things with fear. That specific strategy, I think that people could really um, not complicate it by just thinking, how can I have a conversation with somebody that has nothing to do with real estate? How can I just copy and paste this? Hey there, it's been a little while. How are things going? Like that's it.
Conversation starter.
It's just a simple conversation starter, because we know that just like offline, online, if people are engaged, eventually the conversation goes to, you know, how's the market, or what's new in real estate, or how have you been doing this year? It's just the natural flow of that conversation.
Yeah, it does, man. It always comes back to that. Okay, cool. So I appreciate you going down that rabbit hole with me.
Sorry, man.
No. I appreciate that. Like, because I promise you, there's people listening. We got a lot of new agents as well as very experienced agents like yourself who are listening, who listen to this podcast, and they go, "All right, but give me something tactical." So I appreciate you doing that with me. So let's do this. I want to hear more about your story. So you hit the ground running, 100 closings your first year, and as you go through your first few years, you're moving up the ranks, so to speak, at Remax, and eventually you get to a point where you say, "Man, I think I want to go start my own thing." Like, what was that thought process like? What was that? What was going on in your mind, in your business at that time?
So you know, I had a business partner at one point that when we partnered up, it was very shortly after my team pretty much dissolved. You know, I had the largest team in my marketplace. You know, buyer agents, couple admin, you know, one primarily listing and buyer agent, and it just got really chaotic, both inside the team and my personal life. And so I ended up partnering with a guy that was a little more streamlined, decent producer, you know, not at the level that I was, but decent producer. And we just took off and had this huge year. You know, we went number one in my company, or in the company that we were working with. And our commission was only off by about $500 as far as what we brought to the table. And I think we were, you know, just the two of us and one agent, couple hundred ends, or pretty close to it.
Wow.
So, you know, huge year. And then we just looked at it, you know, we were paying a lot of money at the company that we were at. And based on some of the speaking and coaching that I had done outside of our market, just felt that the value wasn't there in terms of really, really looking at it. So I interviewed with, all of the models in my marketplace again, big brand or independent. And I couldn't find a solution that really felt good to me, because if we made a lateral move to another big brand that might have been a little bit less money, well, I was doing about 30 to 50 agent referrals a year through the REMAX network, which there's no model on the planet that would have saved me that kind of money if I were to lose those. And the independents, they were a little bit less, or just a lower fee type of model were a little bit less, but they weren't going to offer what I was looking for in terms of a growth strategy. So lots of brainstorming, with the old partner, and we came out with this company, and we, I think, had people signing up, after week one. We had
awesome.
a couple agents that came over, and then I think by 6 months we were 25, 30 agents. It was a scary move for sure.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, like when all of a sudden, I can still remember us sitting there, in our office space that we leased, at the start, and you could fire a cannon off through the thing, or and because nobody was there, right? So you're going like, how long is this going to last for?
Are the people going to come, right? Yeah.
Totally.
That's awesome. So, okay. So you took a chance. It'd be fair to say you kind of put your ass on the line.
Yep.
Yeah. I love that. I was talking about this with a guest recently. It seems like anybody who's ever built something really good at one point or another, and usually multiple times, sort of has their ass on the line and, so to speak, all their chips on the table, right? Trying to make something work because they believe they have a vision, right? And they've got to go all in to make that work. And obviously you had I don't know if it was all your chips, but you put a lot of chips on the table.
Totally.
and you went after it. And that's something I appreciate about you. And I think has attracted me to you as your friend. Okay. So talk to me about, so you start the brokerage, it starts building, you guys gain momentum. And you mentioned previous business partner. So I know you're the sole owner now of the brokerage. Talk to me about today. Like, what does your business look like? Are you doing any personal sales yourself? Do you have a team? Do you coach? You mentioned speaking and training, that you're leading a brokerage at the same time. Like, tell me what does your business world look like these days, man?
Sure. So it's, I have to be responsible because I've got a gag order on me about, the way that the business partnership dissolved, but, just safely saying, in March, when I purchased the company outright, what I really had to look at was foundation, the foundation of the organization, because obviously whenever, there's a divide in business, people can really find that to be unstable, and addressing, 85 people, that had no idea that this might be happening. You have to look at, like, what is it that is going to create an honest and healthy foundation for an organization. And so I just went backwards. I said, at the start, this company was based on two guys selling a bunch of real estate. And it was, based on really looking at the culture of the company in terms of how we can support, but really determining, which I had done a lot of exploring on, what people really wanted from me as a broker owner. Because sometimes when you get, the story, and you guys would be the same, and I'm sure that you observe it. Sometimes people come into an organization because they hear that, you had this crazy story of selling over 100 homes, or, you're selling hundreds of homes a year, and you explain how you've done it, and they love the idea of it. They suck up the information like it's sugar, but when they don't take the necessary action and don't sell that 100 homes, then they spit it out like it's salt. And then you get people leaving, right? And that's just the way that it goes. And so what I really identified was that, number one, people don't always want to just hear from me and how great my sales career was. They want to hear from other, people. They want to be introduced to people like you, leaders, influencers. So I started really mapping out some healthy, training with little masterminds, guest speakers, looking at the social dynamic where, about a year ago, I would say that the company's culture was fractured, not broken, but a little bit fractured. So how can we bring people together a little bit more than we have in the past? And I've got an amazing staff. My girlfriend is, very, very involved with, just supporting me and the ongoing challenges of what was and what is and everything else. And it was super. We had 9 people exit the company, not all because of what transpired, but I think I recruited 14 in. I continue to run, a small sales team. It's that whole thing. You don't want to be the number one agent in your office. And we've got some huge producers now, which has been just amazing to watch. But I run a small sales team because it's a part of the foundation of the company.
Yep.
It also keeps me in the trenches. I'm not actively trading like I was. If I go to a listing appointment, with my listing partner, I'm in and out in 30 minutes tops.
Yeah.
And it's as the price and the commission, marketing, that's all agreed on. As she's signing paperwork, I'm out the door and doing, something else. So small sales team where I'm pretty leveraged, very engaged in the brokerage. I haven't hired a manager or anything like that, maybe down the road, but I've got to be very, very present within the organization right now. I continue to coach. And as you probably know, my coaching is a little bit more unique, with the coaching in the book and some of the things that I cover off. It's more in the personal and spiritual development space for people that want that. Real estate's my main environment that my clients come from. Not that it's specific to real estate, but a lot of people that come into the coaching, they think they want real estate. And then, we go down a completely different road, right? And, that's just been, a blessing and something that I just thoroughly enjoy, but it's a very, very, small group of coaching clients, just based on the energy that, that you have to expend on to be a decent coach. And speaking is just selective. I've got 3 boys. One of them plays hockey very, very actively, Nate Dogg. And so he's on the ice 170 times a year.
Whoa.
So I'm very committed to not missing any of his sports. His mom and I are, we've been separated for over a year, and it's a week on, week off thing for me, which was a massive adjustment. I'm still adjusting, right? Because you go from being able to go and do whatever you want, speak and, business and get into all sorts of trouble and all the rest to, you've got to be very, very present as a dad and, in some cases making up for a little bit of lost time too. So,
yeah, man. That's a lot. You mentioned the book. So you wrote a book this last year. Tell us about that. What prompted you to do that?
Sure. So the book is called The Integrity Vow, Engaging Your Authentic Self. So about, when was it? 2015, I started coaching with John Cheplack, who I know you're super tight with. And that was, probably one of the most profound coaching experiences that I had. I'd coached with just about every real estate trainer on the planet. And when I started working with John, we just went into, a way different roadmap to, how to get, clean and clear on everything that I needed to make sure that I was just a better human being. And so John opened up, doorways to what was really like a smorgasbord of self-discovery, spirituality, all the things that I had absolutely no foundation in whatsoever. And through that and our friendship, I started seeing that I was very, very transparent. Our relationship, online and social was very public. And so when you work in that law of transparency or authenticity, it attracts other people. So I started to see that my little coaching client, portfolio really started to change. It was people that were coming in for way, way different reasons, still coming in to talk about real estate, but immediately we started going down that transparent road, and real estate is just it's a breeding ground for all sorts of shit, right? You've got lack of purpose, workaholism, infidelity, addiction, all the wonderful things that I've certainly experienced. And my coaching clients started to share a lot of their stories. So in doing my own self-discovery and journaling, which I did for about a couple of years, I just started to take note of a lot of the stories, that my clients had as well. And I think that, we try and live up in so many ways to the societal standard. And that was really what it came back down to, for so many years, I just felt so stuck in a relationship, stuck in, the way that I thought that I had to be, not being very, very truthful to what I refer to as the authentic self, the absolute, very, very deepest true knowing of who I am and who I want to be. But we get caught up in this societal programming where we have to, have all these roles that we need to live, right? And so
Yeah.
I had journaled on it for a couple of years, and then I had my own podcast interview where I interviewed Tamara Doris out of Sacramento, and she had written a number of books inside the real estate world, but huge spiritual background as well. And she just asked me, like, when are you going to write your book? And it just kind of dawned on me that I thought I had a book. I mean, 250, 300 pages of journaling and some of my, coaching client experiences. And I, sent it to her, and she said, this is good journaling, but it's really, your friends and family might like this, but it needs to be, a book. So I went through that whole process as far as, book coaching and, just kind of creating it where it would actually appeal to, a number of different audiences. Very, very, strategic in terms of who I wanted to work with, the book editing, getting it recorded for Audible, created a workbook so that people can go beneath the surface of just reading a book or listening to it. And then it's on to the next one, because that's a huge problem for people that are learning in today's, information overwhelmed society as well. So it's been cool, man. Like, yeah, I've really put myself out there, like, very, very transparently. And it's not a bestseller in every bookstore on the planet yet, but the feedback's been tremendous. Super, super honored and grateful that people have read it and will step forward with their stories, whatever they might be.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing so much about that. So, and we'll put a link there for the book as well. Talk to me real quick about 2019. Like, so we're starting to wrap up. I got a few more questions, but one of those is 2019. Like, what's on the horizon for Ryan in 2019 that you're excited about?
Well, much like you, man, expansion, right?
Yeah.
And so it's it's been a year and it's ongoing. There's people that still want to challenge the brokerage a little bit, which is pretty typical whenever you have some change. But ultimately, when I look at it, my goal was to make sure that the company was in a really good, healthy place as far as that foundation goes. And so we have a model here because realtors can't incorporate in Ontario, so they can't create that tax shelter unless they're their actual model. So I've created what's called a sub brokerage. So it's like a mini brokerage, and there's different words for it, but it's actually a mini franchise. And so I've got a few of our higher producing agents that are going through that, right now, which that way I can expand, whether it's into different markets or, continuing to grow outside of it. I don't think it's a right now thing to go all over the place, but I'm certainly open to conversation and super excited about the people that we have. It's been a year of really laying that honest, healthy foundation. And I think when you do that, and you continue to, move backwards into, my own personal foundation, you just set yourself up very, very solid, in terms of what's next. So
Right on.
I'm not really attached to any specific outcome for next year. I want to, revisit a little bit more on my own, health and fitness. It's just been a new relationship, a lot of stress, just kind of going back into like that wicked committed and consistent space, which is never easy and certainly never perfect for me. And just connecting with good people, man. I hope to come out, to your event and, see what you guys are doing and, just stay in that space of contribution, abundance, influence, and working in that law of association. You find out very quickly when you go through some challenging times what associations need to be cut. And I think that I'm just blessed to have people like you in my life and the Cheplaks and, the amazing members that stepped up in my company and kids and, just kind of moving into that space of gratitude for, the first part of the year and, as much as I can.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, we're excited have you out. Next Level Agent, NLAlive.com it's actually up. We're really starting to put some work behind that right now and getting all of our plans in place. So you can bet I'm going to be in touch very soon about those details. All right. So I've got a question for you. that I like to ask everybody, but before I do that, so someone listening to this, where's the best place for them to find you at? Like, I
Sure.
know you're on social, but where are you most active? What's the easiest way to get in touch with you if someone wants to learn more about what you're doing, or buy your book, or read your posts, or join one of your Facebook groups? What's the place for people to go?
Yeah, so personal Facebook, Ryan Hodge. People can connect with me there. There's a pretty good following on the book page as well, which is the Integrity Vow, Engaging Your Authentic Self. The book can be found at www.theintegrityvow.com,
Okay.
ryanhodge.com, and you've got the links for those. I think that's got, my coaching, speaking info. But ultimately, anytime somebody wants to connect, they can find me for sure. And it's just a matter of, if they're interested in the book, it's on that site. It's on Amazon. Recorded it on Audible, which was a crazy experience. So it's there for people to listen and share if they're interested.
Awesome. Well, hey, dude. Okay, so I got my last question for you, and it's this. So, what are your top three pieces of advice for kicking ass? So, somebody comes to you, and could be a friend, could be a coaching client, could just be an agent in your office, could just be somebody outside of business. But they say, Brian, I need to kick more ass. Like, I need to do better at life, and that encompasses everything. What are your top three tips for that?
Number one is to understand that you are a reflection of every single one of the choices that you've made and have ever made. Understand that you're a reflection. So taking that full personal responsibility.
Okay.
Number two, having an actual committed plan where you can see what activities are required to meet your end result. Because that's the challenge that I find that most people have, is that they have that idea, they have that goal, but they don't know what it actually takes, and they haven't built it out for a commitment. That's where you can coach people in terms of, if you have done the commitments and you're not getting the results, then, something might be wrong with your messaging or your dialogue or your script, or, whatever thing you wanted to do personally. But if you have not done it, and you know what needs to happen in order for you to experience that happiness, freedom, results-based productivity, both inside and outside of real estate, then it would take me to point number three, is where in your experience was this created, where you know what you need to do, however, you're not doing it, and why. And
Okay.
that's the deep dive. That's the type of work that I love to do.
Yeah.
There's just so much fun for me inside of that, and it's just a really unique little, niche space in the coaching world that I love to play in.
That's awesome, man. Well, Ryan, man, I so appreciate your time today. Any last thoughts, parting shots you want to leave us with before we sign off?
Yeah, you know what, man? I'm so grateful to know you guys, and I can't wait to post this and get more people into the next level group, because I think that it is by far, the top real estate group on the planet on Facebook, for sure. So what you guys are doing is epic, and I've just been blessed to spend some time, man.
Thanks a lot, man. I super appreciate that, and I'll make sure the check clears for your endorsement this month on the Facebook group, man. Thanks a lot, dude. Seriously, for all you do, I appreciate the way you lead from the front and are honest and just sort of vulnerable about who you are as a person and your challenges, and just you lead, man. You lead from a lot of different ways, and I appreciate that about you.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks a lot, man. All right, guys, we will see you next time. Have a great one.